What is a double standard that really bothers you? Parenting expectations. My wife died when my kids were 11 months and 2 years old. When I took the kids to the grocery store, without fail, I'd get comments like, "Oh, daddy's day out, huh?" Breaking point for me was taking them out to eat. I sat there for 20 minutes after being seated, and finally the server came back to the table and goes, "Did you want to try ordering for the kids, or are we still waiting for mom?" I straight up said to her, "Well, we'd be waiting for a long time because she's dead. I don't need to try. I can order just fine." I was a single dad for several years when my daughter was young. The worst one was going clothes shopping and the store's employees telling me I couldn't take her into a changing room. No, she's 6. She's not going in there alone. Oh man, this part is so frustrating. Same with bathrooms in general. It's like you've got to go through this calculation in your head. Do I send my 4-year-old daughter into a crowded women's bathroom alone? Do I go into the women's restroom with her and have everyone think I'm a creep, sicko, pedo? Or do I take her into the men's restroom where a bunch of men have their wankers dangling out? Of course, a mother has zero problems taking a little boy into the women's restroom. All these calculations get extra interesting if your kid has much darker or lighter skin than you. So rando paranoid QAnon types gets to wonder whether you're a human trafficker or something. I think there has been great strides and emphasis in our society in opening up traditionally male spaces for women. But really, I feel like there really hasn't been that much same emphasis for men in the parenting space. Management enforcing rules they break all the time. When I worked at Best Buy, they were strict about cell phones. It was really frustrating getting yelled at by a supervisor or manager to put my phone away while they're holding a cell phone themselves. I eventually had enough chutzpah to say, "Only if you put yours away first." They never bothered us about it again. That doesn't sound true. The fact that you said something means that you actually made a difference. Most people remain silent and allow unethical behavior to continue. Being told it is okay to ask questions and being treated like an inconvenience when you do. I hate this so much. That annoyed person almost always being a boss or a university professor. The professors especially annoyed me back when I was in university. Every first day of a new class, while going over the course syllabus, the profs would always say, "Never be afraid to ask questions," as they would be happy to accept and answer questions at any time with open arms. Yeah, I don't believe it. Sending them an email with questions would always go unanswered, and if you find them in their offices, they always act like they are being inconvenienced just by your presence alone. Hell, even you went to their office hours during their designated office hours, which was always around 1 hour a week. What the WTF is that about? Again, same response. Well, look here, Mr. Ma'am. My ridiculous tuition is paying a good chunk of your salary, so I expect you to treat me with respect and be there to educate me and be available within reason to answer my questions when I need it. I'm an American. But, true. I was born and raised in a country that does not encourage the use of personal vehicles. There is a lot of public transportation available. As a result, I have very little mechanical expertise. My white girlfriend, who grew up in the country and whose father is a mechanic, has spent her entire life tinkering with automobiles. When we go to an auto parts store to get something, the salespeople never say anything to her. Even if they ask me a question and she answers, they continue to talk to me as if she doesn't exist. It's unbelievable. They don't seem to notice her. She's gone to job interviews for mechanical jobs where the interviewer asks her extremely simple and dismissive questions because they don't believe she can understand what they're asking. I called the mechanic yesterday about a sensor on my car needing attention, and he spent 5 minutes explaining to me that temperature changes can mess with air pressure rather than listen to me explain that that wasn't the problem. Are you me? I had the same tire go flat overnight 3 times in the span of a week and was told the exact same line about temperature by my dealership mechanic. Never got out of my car and he refused to reset my TPMS. Finally got the tire worked on for free at a Pep Boys with great service. Ridiculous. If one more male mechanic explains to me unprompted what a frickin' air filter does, I'm gonna go full falling down. I changed them myself for $15. I'm aware of what they are and what they do. I'm not a car expert, but FFS, it's a filter. As a former mechanic and shop manager, I know your pain, and FWIW Texan Service advisors are trained to explain stuff like air filters in a ploy to upsell a customer a product by emphasizing why it's important and why they need it. The problem is they get so used to running that dialogue that it becomes patronizing and upsets any customer that even has a vague idea of what those parts do. When I became manager, I told my techs to just inform the customer on what they found during the inspection and ask them if they had any questions or wanted anything clarified before we completed their service. Things went much smoother after that. You get in ahead of everyone else and no one notices or cares, but God forbid you depart before everyone else and are a slug. No, I worked the same number of hours, if not more than you. You weren't here to see it, but that doesn't mean I wasn't here. At one point, when I had not long started working, I had to get a lift with my dad on his morning commute. He left very early, meaning I was there from 5:30 a.m. I usually picked up extra work when I got in, stayed my whole usual work day anyway, without asking questions. But one day, I wasn't feeling so great, so I asked if I could leave early. Didn't think it would be an issue since I had already worked my contracted hours. Got massively told off over it, as working outside of office hours doesn't count as work. Stop putting in extra work or going out of my way to help them after that. Working outside of office hours doesn't count as work. I got told this at a workplace that sucked in general. Traffic in the DC area is awful, so you have to allow an extra time every day. If something went wrong, someone ran late, they had to make up that time. But if you got lucky and arrived early, that didn't count. After I got told that, I never did anything before my official start time. I'd stroll into the park next to the office building or play online if the weather sucked. Playing a video game in the evening is considered a bad habit and bad for you, yet the same people who say that spend every minute home either watching TV or on their phone. I agree with this. I've even suggested to my parents that they could try games that appeal to them. My mom's response is, I can't think of anything worse than sitting in front of a screen for hours. And my dad's is simply, I don't have the time. They both spend most of their evenings watching TV and browsing their phones. And my dad also spends evenings sat watching fail compilations on YouTube. If I'm with my kids without the miss around, people ask if I'm babysitting. No, miss. They're my kids. I'm parenting. My husband got this all the time when the kids were little. People were like, oh, how cute. You're babysitting the boys for mom today, with a little smile. He's like, no, they're my kids. I'm parenting them today. And then people would give him the dirty look. I bet those people thought they were being endearing. I've been in so many situations where people say disrespectful stuff in an endearing way and are blown away when you push back on it. My partner and I are not planning on having kids for a myriad of reasons. It's decided and we are unwavering. Too many times we've had to endure people drone on and on about how great parents we would be, how it would be a tragedy if we didn't, and how we'll change our minds. It's exhausting and we inevitably lose our patience. Imagine how those people would feel if we went on and on about how they shouldn't have kids and impose our ideals on them. How about we all mind our own business? They think they're being cute and endearing by complimenting us, but all I see are people who don't respect our decisions. I have to show up on time for an interview, but it's fine when an interviewer is late. There's a huge difference between personal emergency and poor planning. Yep, got scheduled for an interviewer once. Employer says they would email and text me the location on where the interview would take place for the next day. Waited hours and still no notification. 2 days later, the employer called and asked why I didn't show up for the interview. I told them they never sent the information on where to meet, and I added I was no longer interested in the position. I'm still in awe over the double standard with which people treat the credibility of information. If it confirms their worldview, they're happy to accept extraordinary information from partisan blogs, tabloids, and columnists with no further confirmation. But if it challenges their worldview, good luck convincing them of anything. I argued with a dude who decided to trust the Washington Examiner's outright lie about the IRS bank reporting proposal. I gave him a link to the actual proposal published on the Treasury's website, pointing him to the exact page that details the proposal, and he still dismissed the information as partisan deceit. This one baffles me as well. Had my friend's girlfriend send me an article with some nonsense clickbait title, and in the article itself, it admitted that their title was only true on a technicality. But if they were being truthful, the title wouldn't have been nearly as outrageous. I point this out to her, and she just refuses to acknowledge it and continues to act as if the article wasn't total BS and she hadn't just proved my point for me. absolutely mind-boggling. Learning how to do girls' hair. Around my area, a man would be called gay for doing a little girl's hair. I want to learn and get better at doing my 5-year-old daughter's hair. Nothing extreme, just the regular nice stuff, I guess. Braid, ponytails, and other cool stuff like that. Men around here only do men's hair, but women can do both men's and women's hair. My old man was in the military and he braided my hair so much. He learned it while being in the field and bored out of his mind. He would make these rope-like braids that I would take out in the morning for school. A teacher asked if I got a perm. No idea what that was. But I'd proudly say, nope, my dad did my hair. He also learned how to use a sewing machine in order to sew patches for his uniform. I always thought it was so cool being taught how to sew from my dad. Sewing for a guy can be a super valuable skill, especially in military-type settings like your dad. I knew a guy who made serious bank on the side sewing up heavy-duty stuff like pouches, equipment covers, additional pockets, etc. And everyone thought he was cool AF for being able to modify stuff. That gay men can't be misogynist. Sometimes they are the worst. That anyone from a marginalized group can't be racist, sexist, homophobic because they have victim brownie points. Newsflash! Discrimination is discrimination. This is so true. About a year ago, there was this white feminist TikToker getting blasted on her comments section for defending sexist comments by men who were people of color because they were oppressed and just lashing out their frustrations. Nah, sexism is still sexism. You are not allowed to be emotional or show emotions, but you should do it. It's okay and you should be allowed to show your weakness and emotions, but when we do, it's seen as cringy, needy, unmanly. This comment hits at home. I knew I grew up in an unhealthy environment with my father who gets so angry at me for showing any type of emotion. Like if I were to lightly bang my fists on a table, it would make him angry. My parents would hate when I cried in school when I was in kindergarten. Thankfully, I stopped in the first grade. Heck, it's normal to stop crying so much at age 7, though. The irony of that, he got angry and emotion because you showed emotion. Blind spots are so weird. You'd think the contradiction would be pretty obvious, but I guess not everyone self-reflects. In India, everyone wants signal, but they don't want mobile cell towers in their area. The old NIMBY. That's a global phenomenon. Much of the world agrees that we should move to renewable power, but no one wants wind turbines or solar farms near them. Hey, I'd take some. Don't go to work/school if you're sick, but if you miss work/school, you're in trouble. I feel like including my story because everyone else is. I got my first job back in late September, early October, and I loved it. The company was great and it was a very welcoming environment. A few of my coworkers disagreed, but this was my first job and I didn't want to step on anyone's toes. I worked there for about a month, all week, about 8-hour shifts. A few were longer because it took longer to close, and I start getting a pain in my legs/knees. I push it off as exhaustion/overexertion and keep going, thinking that I'm just not used to working this hard. 2 days later, I can't get up on my own. Thankfully, I have 2 days off, so I'm like, okay, I'll rotate between icing and heating my knees/legs. Doesn't work. On the day before I go in and call and explain that I can't walk, but they just got a truck in, I felt bad and went in anyways. Huge mistakes. It makes everything worse. Even though I'm only scheduled for 2 hours, I keep taking more days off because I can't walk. How can they expect me to work? All the while, I'm trying to figure out what's wrong. So I'm just not sitting around, not doing anything about it. My supervisors are getting annoyed at me at this point, but I still can't hardly move. Everything comes to a head when one day after dinner, I attempt to stand up and there's a very sickening crack noise. I collapse back into my chair because my legs hurt so badly. That was the night I went to the hospital. Big shock. That didn't do anything for me. They pretty much tell me I should be fine. I try to go back to work, but end up leaving early to go to another ER because something is wrong. I get a call from one of my supervisors and I'm told they don't accept hospital notes and that I need to come in more. Then later, I get another call that they do accept hospital notes, but because I didn't bring any in, since I was told they don't accept them and I didn't ask for any, they can only assume I'm self-prescribing my rest. They also start blaming me for my injury/pain. I quit on the spot. To this day, I can barely walk by myself. Good God. Don't judge a book by its cover, but first impressions are everything. I think people tend to misunderstand don't judge a book by its cover. It's referring to appearances, not information. To say, if a guy looks stereotypically tough with lots of tattoos and a shaved head, he's committed 5 murders, 3 melodies, and is sentenced to jail, it's not really judging a book by its cover to think, probably not a great dude. Rather, it's making an educated guess as to what kind of person he is based on the information at hand. Judging is when you know nothing about an individual and make a decision based on your preconceived notions. For instance, my grade school janitor was a big guy covered in tattoos and with a shaved head. Many kids were afraid of him. He was actually incredibly kind and gentle. To be afraid of him was judging a book by its cover. If you think about it this way, first impressions are everything go hand in hand with don't judge a book by its cover. I like that this tough guy has committed 5 murders, but only 3 felonies. Dude's got a great attorney. Companies doing PSAs for people to not litter and recycle their products when they themselves are producing products that mostly cannot be properly recycled and end up in landfills anyways. Bonus points for taxes we pay for recycling programs in our cities.